Okay, let us begin our final shiur in Masechet Megillah, Baruch Hashem. If you could tell, and you're watching from afar, Masechet Baba Metzia guy, all right? We are in reserve cut now, and we're learning here to celebrate this beautiful siyum of Masechet Megillah, which has taken us almost exactly a year and a couple weeks to be able to finish. So, let us begin. We are on the bottom of page Lamed Aleph Amud Bet 31b3 if you're following in the article. Tanya, we learn. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Im yomer lechazekenim stor, v'yeladim beneh. What should you do? Setor v'al beneh. Let's say there's a disagreement between the old and the young. I remember that in the matchup between Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, they were calling it the war of the old versus the young. Who won? Old. And I told all the guys in the shiur, risking my reputation as a rabbi, that the old would win. Why? Because of this Gemara. Who won? Patrick Mahomes. No, joking. Tom Brady won, the old one. Why? Says the Gemara something fascinating. So if the old people tell you, knock it down, and the young people tell you, build it, what should you do? You should knock it down. Why? The knocking down of the elderly is actually an act of building. And the building of the young and the foolish and the reckless and the risk-taking is actually an act of destruction. How many times do you have this, where someone is savvy and risk-averse and manages to save their entire portfolio versus the other guy who jumps in with both feet because this is the new top thing, whether it's Theranos or cryptocurrency or whatever it might be. Yeah, this is where the future is, and you don't see it because you're old. The destruction of the old is considered building when they are wise, and the building of the young sometimes is destruction. The Siman de Davar, where do we find this example borne out? Rehavam ben Shlomo. Who's Rehavam ben Shlomo? Shlomo HaMelech had a son Rehavam. Rehavam took over after King Solomon. Now, King Shlomo had very high taxes for a lot of reasons, but one of the primary reasons was because he built Beit HaMikdash. And in that initial stage, there was a lot of expenses that were required. So now comes Rehavam ruling in the post-Beit HaMikdash, and they said to him, and what did Rehavam said? Read my lips. No new taxes, right? And Rehavam kept all the taxes, even though the elderly advisors told him to cut it wasn't necessary. And the young advisor said, nah, leave it, it's fine. You'll fill the coffers of the royal coffers. Rehavam listened to the young, right? Because he thought he was building, but actually what happened? The people revolted, and that enabled Yeravam ben Nevat, who we've read about numerous times in Masechet Ta'anit, who set up the Avodah Zarah in all the different places. Okay, it enabled him to tear the kingdom away from the house of David and Yehuda. The Gemara continues. We're going back now to our Braita. Ten Rabbanan, we've seen this already. When you leave off Shabbat Shacharit, so as an example, let's use practical examples what we just read. What did we finish Shabbat Shacharit just now, this week's parasha? Yitro. What do you do? Sham Korim b'Mincha. You read the next parasha, which would be Mishpatim by Mincha. What do you do after that? After Mincha, Sham Korim b'Sheni. So if you read Sheni at Mincha on Shabbat of Mishpatim, the beginning of Mishpatim, on Monday you would read Aliyat Shilishi, potentially. What would you read? Or Shilishi Revi'i. What would you read afterwards on Thursday? Aliyat Chamishi Shishi. What would you read the next Shabbat? B'Sheni Sham Korim b'Shabbat Haba'at. You would read whatever's left of the parasha. So you'd be chipping away progressively at the reading of the Torah, okay? Someone asked me, wow, Rabbi, it means that they were reading so little back then. We're reading much more now. I said, actually, back then, they used to finish the Torah not once every year, once every 3 years. So the fact that it was divided, Shabbat Mincha, Sheni and Chamishi, actually might have been almost very similar to where we're at now. We're reading 3 times as long, etc., etc. Okay. Says the Gemara, Divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir said, these are the words of Rabbi Meir. We do not hold like this, obviously. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Makom shemafsikim Shabbat Shacharit, wherever you left off Shabbat Shacharit, Sham Korim Mincha, Ubasheni, Ubachamishi. So that point where you left off, which is this week's parasha, Parashat Mishpatim, you would start Ve'ela Mishpatim, Shabbat Mincha, then Monday morning, Ve'ela Mishpatim, Thursday morning, Ve'ela Mishpatim, and then with Shabbat Haba'ah, where would you start? Same place, Ela mishpatim. Amar Reb Zera says, halacha, what's halacha? Makom shavasik b'shavat b'shacharit. Sham korim mimcha, sheni, chamishi, u'shavat haba. Exactly like what we just said. Now, the Gemara asks a question. Rabbi Zera, you just told me that you hold that the halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So why didn't you just tell me the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda? Let him just say halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara answers, Mishum de'afchelu, because there were different versions of this Mishnah. Some people's version of this Mishnah had Rabbi Meir saying the second part, Rabbi Yehuda saying the first part. So if you would just say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, the people who had the Mishnah the way we have it would know the correct halakha. The people who had the quote, the source, the other way, because they were not careful with their sourcing, like Claudine Gay, so the halakha would come out exactly the opposite. Oh, sorry, Claudine Gay doesn't quote anybody. The Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan. So therefore he said the halakha is as such. Tanu Rabbanan, the Gemara learns in the Braita, Poteach v'ro'eh. When you read the Torah, what do? You open up the Torah, you find the place that you're going to start from. Golel, you close it, umevarech. Now I see lots of people are very careful about the opening and finding the place with the tzitzit.
Yes.
But then they don't close the Torah. So the Torah is wide open when they make the beracha. You're not supposed to do that. Whether it's Ashkenaz and you roll it closed, or it's Sephardic and you close the book, or, by the way, that's one of the reasons why they they have that curtain there. It's two reasons. We'll see two reasons for the towel. We'll come back to it in just a second. Okay? So you cover the words when you make the beracha. So the Gemara says, Poteach uro'eh, you open it and you see it. Golelu mevarech. By the way, I just want you to know, if you want to learn our next Masechet with us, we do Sunday morning, Tuesday, and Thursday. So Fadal, you're always welcome, okay? God bless you. Golel mevarech. The Gemara says, what does he then do? You then close it and you make the beracha when it's closed. V'chozeru poteach v'koreh. And you return and you open it again and you read it. Different Meir. Meir says that's what Meir holds. If Yehuda says poteach v'roeh, you open it and you see it. Umevarech v'koreh, and then you make a beracha when it's open and you read from it, and you don't need to close it afterwards.
That's what a lot of Ashkenazim do.
While it's open.
But Moshe Feinstein did that.
You leave it open.
Yeah.
Says the Gemara, "My Talmud Rabbi Meir." What's the reason for Rabbi Meir? Why does he want you to close it when you're making the beracha? That seems very counter to what one might think. Like, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're making Birkat Levana. The halakha is that you're supposed to, first of all, be able to see the moon in order to make the beracha. But secondly, you're supposed to look up at the moon and actually glance at it intentionally before the beracha. Once you start making the beracha, then you don't look at it, you focus on the beracha, okay? But anytime you're making a beracha on something, you have to take a look at it. If you're making a beracha on the Torah, why would you think that you would close the Torah before you start to make a beracha? The Gemara says, the reason for Rabbi Meir is, what do we say? That if a person who is reading the Torah, he should not help the translator by giving any translation. We're worried that people will think, oh, it says the Targum, the translation, in the Torah. The guy just translated, you know what it says in the Torah scroll? It says, and he said. In other words, it's English words in the Torah, or Aramaic. Hakanami here too, they shouldn't think that the berachot themselves are written in the scroll. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda. So what does Rabbi Yehuda hold? Obviously, that's also true. And then why does he think it's okay to keep it open if we're trying to exclude people from thinking that things that aren't in the scroll are in the scroll? The Gemara says, Targum ika lemite. You can make a mistake when it comes to Targum. Berachot leka lemite. Everybody knows that the berachot are not written in there. So the only question of whether something is written in there is whether the Targum is written in there. When it comes to the berachot, no one thinks the berachot are written in there. So therefore, since it's not something that we need to negate by keeping it open, or by closing it, so therefore Rabbi Yehuda says, leave it open.
Don't we have a Torah in the shul that has the berachot that come like when the Torah is in the screen?
Charles Darwish's.
Yeah.
The berachot cover. It's genius because it forces people to close it. Yeah, except it's not so genius because no one knows it exists. So it scrolls into itself. It would be more genius if it was like a big flashing Vegas sign saying, unroll berachot here. Okay. Donated by. Okay, it says the Gemara. Vileka. So what's the Amar Rabbi Zera? Amar Rabbi Ramata. Rabbi Zera says the name Ramata. Halacha poteach uroeh umevarech v'koreh. Rabbi Zera says that the halacha is that you do not have to close it. Halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda. Now remember, that's Rav Zera saying that that's the halacha. What do? We close it. We don't hold like Rav Zera's decision on the halacha. Okay? Continues the Gemara. Why doesn't he just say again halacha Yehuda? It's the same thing. Because people mix up in the different versions of this Braita. People had Rabbi Yehuda as saying close, and Rabbi Meir is saying open. So if he wanted to tell you to open it, he couldn't tell you halacha Rabbi Yehuda because he was aware of the other version. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Zera says the name of Ramata. Haluchot v'abimot en mehem mishum kedusha. When you have luchot, there's boards that we would put out, ve'abimot, and the actual platforms themselves, en ba'em mishum kedusha. We've discussed already the idea that there's things that are used in the Beit Knesset that are just benches. Those things, they have no kedusha. What things have kedusha? We discussed the aron, the thing, and we asked if it's tashmish or tashmish did tashmish. But the Gemara is expressly stating that things that are just peripheral to that do not follow the same laws of kedusha. And therefore, they do not have the law of Devarim Kedushim. Now, this idea of what the luchot is a matter of discussion. What does it mean luchot over here? Which boards is it describing? One of the opinions is it's the boards that they would use as the external covers to chumashim and to nachs. So it was not part of the book. It was just an extra cover that they would put on top of it that would protect it, that it was hard. So as an example, that's one opinion about what the luchot are. But the derived lesson for me is much wider than that, as I said. The derived lesson for me is that the objects in the Beit Knesset, which are not specifically Tashmisheh Kedusha, or Tashmisheh Mitzvah, or Tashmisheh de Tashmisheh, they do not have kedusha. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Shefatia, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Shefat said to Rabbi Yochanan, "Agol Sefer Torah tzech she'amidenu al tifer." Someone who rolls the Sefer Torah, they have to be very careful that they should close it on the seam in the back. There is no one that is more strict on this than Chabad. If God forbid you roll it closed and the seam is not in the middle, they go mental. They'll beat you with the Torah, by the way. And thereby, as they beat you, the seam moves to the middle, right? But they're very, very strict on this because there's a Gemara. The Gemara says explicitly that the seam has to be in the middle. And by the way, understand what this means. Any Torah. Any Torah.
No, it doesn't matter. Chabad, even if they're the
Any Torah. Even if it's a Sephardi. There are Chabad people that have Sephardic Torahs. They're still very strict on it.
Close it on the seam?
They close it on the seam. The seam is in the middle, in between the two rolls. Okay? Yeah. Now, why do they do it? Because when you're pulling the rolls on either side, so if the seam is in the middle, that is the place where it least likely rips the Torah. So therefore, that's true. That's true for any kind of Torah, technically. Sephardic Torah, Ashkenaz, because it's about the rolling. Okay, what that means though is that when you then have the seam not in the middle and you move it to the middle, that means that 100% of the time when you open the Torah in the ark, it's going to be in the wrong place. At best, it's going to be half in the right place. Right? But so you fix it. But the point is, you have to make sure to fix it, because when we say V'zot Torah, it's really supposed to be in the place that you're going to read from the Torah from. Says the Gemara. You have to roll it from the outer side, the roll which is further from him. You have to roll it to not from the inside. And when you're tightening it, now the Gemara is describing a person who's rolling the Sefer Torah by himself. So what's he doing? He's rolling the Sefer Torah, the scrolls are out on his lap. So as an example, what the Gemara was concerned with is if I'm rolling the Sefer Torah to the outside, it might fall off my legs. So what do? Instead, I'm rolling it towards the inside. And the Gemara says that if you're tightening it, then the flip side. But in either scenario, what we're doing is a person's always supposed to roll the Torah in a scenario like that in a way where it won't fall, where it's least likely to fall. When we're looking at the Torah here, what are we seeing in this idea of the seam? In this idea of designating exactly how you roll it, what the Gemara was illustrating is an extreme care, concern, and respect for the Sefer Torah's well-being and welfare. You can't roll it like that. Make sure it's stored like this. We'll see more as well in this idea. And we explained this already in the car on the way here. We talked about this idea that things that you're very precise with, you're very exact with, there's laws how you have to handle it. That illustrates a great sense of respect to that object. I remember actually, this is fascinating, when they had the very old Sefer Torah that Jean-Luc allowed us to go in and to actually see, they were handling it. And how were they handling it? With no gloves. And I looked at this woman, okay, and I was like, how are you touching this manuscript, which is hundreds of years old with no gloves? And you know what she said? She said the gloves grip the pages. So you'd think that that's better. But the likelihood of the glove having that traction on the page and ripping the paper is greater than your finger having that problem on the paper. So what you would think you're doing in order to protect it actually ruins it. Isn't that fascinating?
So can you get gloves that have no...
And then also work on your iPad, you know? Okay, fine. So the Gemara action. The Gemara is describing effectively an extreme care and concern for the Sefer Torah. It says the Gemara. Rabbi says the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Torah. 10 people that read in the Torah. The greatest of the 10 people that have read in the Torah, he's the one that gets to roll the Torah. Now, in our community, this is a non-existent honor. In the Ashkenazim, what people do not realize is that Gelila, even though they give it away to the nobodies, the Gemara says that Gelila is considered more than anything else. Now, but Gelila more than Hagba.
What's Galila?
Gelila is the rolling up of the Torah.
Ahava does this. No?
What do they do?
Ahava does that, and then they hold Hagba up, they turn around the Torah.
What, they have the stick Torahs?
No, they take it, they put it down, they close it, and then a separate person does the...
So that's Hagba, that's not Gelila.
Oh, Hagba, right.
Gelila is the one.
This
This is the roller.
They pick it up and the guy sits down and then someone else walks over.
It's okay, they'll bring it out and people will eat and I'll continue. Yeah. No, they can. It can be. But the Gemara is describing, even in a scenario like this, that it goes to the, okay? Now the Gemara says, the greatest one gets that honor. Why is that the case? Because the one who rolls up the Sefer Torah, he takes the sachar from all of the people, greater than all of the people, but it sounds like he takes all of their reward. That's a real, he's really rolling that up, okay? Yeshua ben Levi says, 10 people that read from the Torah. He received the sachar of all of them. Now, this is not a memra from Rabbi Shefatia, but it's coming from Yochanan ben Zakkai, Yeshua ben Levi himself. Says the Gemara, no, sachar kulan sagadaitach. Do you think it means that you take the sachar of everybody? What do you mean? The guy has his sachar. Why should you get his sachar? Gemara says, Elaema, you understand? Kibel sachar keneged kulam. You get sachar keneged kulam. So whatever he got, you also get that much. It's telling you if each one got one piece, what you got was worth the equivalent of everyone together. Where else do we find this halakha? Also with regards to minyan. If a person comes first, or a person comes 10, number 1 and number 10 are notel sachar keneged the whole minyan. How about if the minyan has 100 people? You get sachar for 100 people. How about if the minyan has 10,000 people? You get sachar for 10,000 people. You should camp out all night like you did for your iPad. Okay, says the Gemara. Remember those days when you had to camp out overnight? Rabbi Shefatia says the name Rabbi Yochanan. Minyan shemishtamshim bebat kol. A minyan. Minayin, where do we know that you're allowed to use a bat kol, a heavenly voice that comes out? When your ears hear something me'achorecha coming from behind you, and it's saying something. The Hani Mili says the Gemara something fascinating. If you hear a bat kol calling out, it's telling you something. Hani Mili, those words that you could rely on the bat kol and listen to what the bat kol says. A bat kol says yes. A bat kol says no. You're trying to decide what to do, and a heavenly voice rings out. You can listen to what it says. Says the Gemara. When is that? Dishama kal gavra b'mata. When you hear a masculine voice in the city, v'kal itata b'dabra. And when you hear a feminine sounding voice in the midbar, in the doesn't mean just a desert. It means an uninhabited place in the fields, the deserts, etc. V'hu and not only that, not only is it that you need to hear a male voice in the city or a female voice in the desert. Viuda Amar, that's tafka when it says hin, yes, or Viuda Amar, lo, lav, no. If it's telling you more than that, you might want to check what pills you're taking. But if it's telling you only hin, or lav, a person can understand from that is a bat kol. I am still waiting. I'm 45 years old. I'm waiting for this to happen.
But he would eat in the forest?
I can always rely on you. I'm still waiting for to have a dilemma, and then all of a sudden a masculine voice in the city or a feminine voice in the desert just says, I'm like, should I go with this car or this car? Should I go with this car? Yes. I'm waiting for the bat call. The Gemara tells you could rely on it to bat call. Now let me share one last thing before we move on, and that is, where do we find an example of this? An ignored bat call by Shmuel. Shmuel is a young boy, and the voice of Hashem comes out to him, and it says, Shmuel, Shmuel. And Shmuel thinks to himself, can't be that God's talking to me, impossible. So what does he think it is? He thinks it's Eli Cohen. So he runs and he says, Eli. He says, yes, what is it? And he says, I didn't call you, go back to sleep. He goes back. Again, Shmuel, Shmuel. He comes running. He says, go back to sleep, I didn't say anything. Third time, he says, listen, if it happens once more, he tells Shmuel, he's a child. So Eli Cohen didn't think for a second, it's God. He said, it happens once more. Say, Hineni, I'm ready. I'm prepared. The voice comes again to Shmuel. Shmuel says, I'm ready, Hineni. And Hashem begins to speak to Shmuel and Navi. Wow. So here's an example of what happens when a person could ignore a bat call. Okay, let's continue. Well, guys, they're going to serve the meat on the table. We're going to finish the Gemara, and we're going to show Hashem how good our intention, our love of the Gemara is, that we're able to do it even while they're serving delicious smelling steaks. And you can also show Hashem how much you love the Gemara whilst you're chewing Gemara, so long as you're not the guy whilst you're chewing steaks, so long as you're not the guy that's saying the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shafati says the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Person who reads the Gemara, he does not have the song, he's not a sing song as he says it, without singing. I gave them chukim lo tovim. I gave them bad laws. I gave them decrees. I gave them a gezerot that were bad. The Gemara says, what? Because you didn't sing the Gemara, that's you're going to have bad curses? But Abaya says, how could that be? Because a person doesn't know how to sing nicely. You're going to mishpatim lo yichyu. You're going to get, the end of that pasuk says, laws that you can't live by. Karit Bey. Gemara says, what it means is like Rav Mishashi, the Amar, that he said, two students that are living in one city. They do not study Torah one with the other. They do not confide, interact with one another in trying to refine the halakha. The pasuk says on them, I gave them bad laws and laws that are impossible to live with. Why? Because they're not refining it in the proper way. So, how is the Gemara understanding? This? If you didn't read it, if you didn't read the Torah properly, what does that mean? Koreh belo ni'ima. Koreh belo ni'ima means that you're reading not in a nice way. In other words, you can't go and have the conversation with anybody else. Okay? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, Parnach. Rabbi Yochanan. You never saw that name in your life. Parnach? Right? Maybe in Great Neck. Amar Parnach. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Parnach says the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Kolach. They're getting offended over there. Sorry, guys. Kolach is Sefer Torah Arom. A person who holds Sefer Torah naked. This does not mean that you came bezilit to shul. If you came bezilit to shul, like we say, you have other problems. But if you came to shul and you're holding to Arom means without anything on your hands, in other words, you're touching the scroll directly. Nikbar Arom. He's buried naked. What? That sounds no tachrichim,
This is why people they go off and they use the talit.
no shroud. Says the Gemara, Arom salka daitach. Does that mean that you buried the guy naked? The Gemara answers, Elaema erum bera mitzvot. It means that he's naked without mitzvot. Like we found in the Haggadah, at erom ve'eria, you were naked without mitzvot, like in the when the Jews left Egypt. So you're going to be naked, you're not going to have any mitzvot to take with you into the grave. The Gemara says, what are you talking about? Below mitzvot, I lose all my mitzvot because I touched the scroll with my bare hands. It means that you don't have that mitzvah. Since now I read the Sefer, the reading from the Sefer right now is negated from me because I treated it not the proper way. Now let me ask you, all these times Abaye asked the question, because I touched it, I should lose it? Can I ask that question again here? because I touched the Sefer, I should lose the ability to have the zechut of the reading of the Torah? Gemara answers yes. Why? Because if you're reading Torah but don't have proper respect for it, to the point where you're able to hold it with your hands, what? You didn't read Torah. You read some book. You read some Aesop's fables. You didn't get the Kiddusha. And let's end the Gemara. Rabbi Yanai says, Rabbi Yanai says, in the son of Rabbi Yanai Saba, of Rabbi Yanai Jr., Rabbi Yanai Senior, Mishmed Rabbi Yanai Rabba, in the name of Rabbi Yanai the Great. Mutav tigalel mitpachat, al yigalel sefer Torah. Better that the cloth wrapping should be rolled around the sefer. Al yigalel sefer Torah. You should not wrap the Torah around the scroll and have the wrapping in it. You should not wrap the Torah scroll. Should not be rolled on the cloth. So in other words, we want to show deference to the Torah, and we're doing it also in the best possible way with regards to the cloth. The Gemara says, helping Israel. Moshe spoke the holidays of God to the Jewish people. Mitzvatan shiyu korin otan kol echad ve'echad bezmano. The mitzvah is to read each one of these festivals in its time. Tanu Rabbanan, like we said, that you read those holidays on the holidays. Tanu Rabbanan, Moshe tiken le'im Yisrael. Moshe instituted for the Jewish people. Shiyu shoalim v'dorshim b'inyan shel yom. They should read about the subject of the day. Hilchot Pesach b'Pesach, laws of Pesach on Pesach. Hilchot Atzeret b'Atzeret, laws of Shavuot Shavuot. Hilchot. Rabotai, we're going to say the last two words together. Hilchot Chag v'Chag. We learn the laws Sukkot on Sukkot. Adran alach b'nei ha'ir v'slik ala Masechet Megillah. Oh, 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 ay, 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 ay. Mazal Tov! Mazal Tov, Rabotai. We're going to do that. We're going to do the Hadran. We're going to do the Hadran and Kaddish, okay? Yes. Hadran Allah. You can record it. You want to record it, you can record it. Yes, stand for it. Hadran Allah Masechet Megillah v'Hadran Chalan. Da'atan Allah Masechet Megillah v'Da'atan Chalan. לא נתנשם מנך מסכת מגילה ולא תתנשם מנן, לא בעלמא הדין ולא בעלמא דעתה. יהי רצון לפניך אלוהינו לאבותינו, שתי תורתך ומונתנו בעולם הזה, ותהיה עמנו לעולם הבא. חננה בר פפא, רמי בר פפא, נחמן בר פפא, חי בר פפא, אבא מרי בר פפא, רפרם בר פפא, רכיש בר פפא, סולחה בר פפא, עדה בר פפא, דרו בר פפא. הערב נעל דברי תורתך בפריות עמך וישראל, ונהיה אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאי צאצאינו וצאצאי עמך בית ישראל, כולנו יודעי שמך ולומדי תורתך לשמה. מאוהבי תרחק ממני מצוותיך, כי לעולם היא לי. יהי ליבי תמים בחוקיך, למען לא אבוש. לעולם לא אשכח פקודיך, כי בם חייתני. ברוך אתה אדוני למדני חוקיך. אמן, אמן, אמן. סלע ועד. מודים אנחנו לך, אדוני לאבותינו, ששמת לכנו מיושבי בית המדרש, ולא שמת לכנו מיושבי הקורענות. שאנו משקיעים ומשקיעים, אנו משקיעים לדברי תורה, הם משקיעים לדברי בהיטלים. אנו עמלים, הם עמלים, אנו עמלים מקבלים שכר, הם עמלים, הם מקבלים שכר. אנו רצים והם רצים. אנו רצים בחיום הבא, הם רצים באש שחת. שנאמר ואתה אלוהים, תורידם באש שחת, אנשי דמים ומלאה, לא יחצו ימיהם, ואני אפתח בך. יהי רצון לפניך לאלוהינו, כשם שעזרתנו לסיים מסכת מגילה, כן תעזרנו להתחיל מסכתות ספרים האחרים לסיימם, ללמוד וללמד לשמור ולעשות לקיים כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, וזכות כל התנאים והאמוראים ותלמידי חכמים יעמוד לנו ולזרענו, שלא תמוש התורה מפינו, בזרענו וזרע זרענו עד עולם, ותתקיים בנו, ויתהלך תנחה אותך, ושוכחה תשמור עליך, והקיצות ההיא תשיחך, כי בי ירבו ימיך, ויוסיפו לך שנות חיים. אורך מימינה ושמאלה אושר כבוד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו שלום. יתקדע ויתקדע שמי רבה. ועם נתחלתנו לחיה מאת היה,
ולעסקה יתרון לחיי עלמה, ולמבנה כרתת יושלם ושכלה הרחלה, בגבה למעיקר פלחנה, נוכלה מנערה, ולתאווה פלחנה דישמעיה לאתרי, וימליך קודשה בריחו במלכותי ויקרא ויצמח וקרא וקרא משיחר, וחי יכול, ביום יכול חיית לכל בית צל, בעגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יש מרבם מברך, לעלם ממיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר, יתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמין קודשה בריחו, אלא מכל בחטא שיעתה, תשבח אתה ונחמתה, דמרם בעלמא ואמרו אמן, על ישראל ועל רבנן ועל תלמידו ועל כל תלמידי תלמידון, ועל כל מאן דעסקים ברואי תדי ועתרא, דם דיבוכה עתה ועתר, ילהון לכל חישלה מרבה וכינה וחזר רחמה, חיינו היכים וזר רוויכם בכל עם קדם ולשוויה, ורב אמרו אמן, יהי שלום רב מצוויה, חיים סבב שון רב למה שזבר פועה גולה אסחברה, ועצר ופוצר אמרו אמן, עושה שלום נברמה,
ולא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל עלינו יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל
That's yours.